The evening sun had already sunk behind the far mesas when the lonely cowboy, Cole Maddox, stepped out onto the porch of his weather-beaten cabin, rubbing the dust of a long day from his palms and letting the quiet breathe around him, the kind of quiet only the frontier knew, heavy, endless, almost like the land was listening to its own heartbeat. He had been alone for 4 winters now, ever since drifting away from the ranch hands he used to ride with, ever since deciding that a man could outrun noise but never his own thoughts, so he might as well settle somewhere the world barely remembered. He had returned from checking the traps by the creek, his boots wet with cold water, his shoulders aching from the hard ride, when suddenly he caught the faint crunch of footsteps, soft, cautious, uneven, coming from the tree line beyond his corral. His hand moved instinctively to the worn revolver at his hip, not out of fear but habit, because out here you didn't wait to see what walked out of the dark. But then she stepped into the weak silver wash of moonlight, a native woman, wrapped in a torn blanket, her braid hanging heavy over her shoulder, her breaths thin and broken as though each one cost her strength she didn't have. She limped toward him, clutching her side where he saw blood seeping through the blanket. And for a moment Cole just stared, stunned because nothing, in the solitude of his life, had prepared him for someone collapsing onto his land, eyes full of exhaustion and something deeper, something like the last flicker of survival. "I'm tired and wounded," she whispered, stopping a few feet from his porch, lifting her gaze to meet his. "Can I rest in your cabin tonight?" The question hit him harder than the cold wind sweeping across the clearing. He wasn't used to voices, especially not ones shaking with pain and dignity at the same time. He stepped closer, seeing now that she had been walking for hours, maybe days, her moccasins shredded, her arms trembling, her expression caught between fear and trust as if she had chosen his door only because every other door in her life had been closed. Cole lowered his hand from the gun slowly, feeling something old and forgotten stir in him, maybe decency, maybe the instinct to protect, maybe the hollow ache of realizing how long it had been since another human being had spoken directly to him. "You're hurt bad," he said quietly but firmly, and she nodded once before swaying on her feet. He reached forward on instinct, grabbing her before she fell, surprised at how light she was, how cold her skin felt through the thin blanket. He carried her inside, laying her gently on the small cot near the stone hearth, then lit a lantern that filled the cabin with warm amber light, revealing her wounds, scratches on her arms, bruises across her ribs, and a gash on her side that looked like the result of running through thorns, or running from someone. As he tended to her injuries, she watched him with guarded eyes, as, though measuring his intentions, and though she spoke little, the silence between them carried stories neither had yet shared. Cole's hands were steady, surprising even himself, cleaning the wound the way his mother once taught him before the world grew harsher than childhood's lessons. When she finally closed her eyes from exhaustion, he sat beside the fire, staring at her across the flickering light, wondering where she had come from, what had driven her into the wilderness alone, and why fate had led her to his lonely cabin of all places. Outside, the night deepened. Coyotes howled in the distant hills, and Cole realized this was the first night in years when loneliness didn't fill the room, replaced instead by a fragile, human presence he barely understood, but felt drawn to protect. Little did he know that letting her in, even for one night, would pull him into a storm far bigger than the silence he'd been living in, a storm that would test loyalty, courage, and the heart he thought he'd locked away for good.